more egoistic in my nature. The idea behind this is that, one, I'm giving to the community, but two, I look at it like, if the community isn't going to use this as a resource, I go back and watch my videos all the time, right? I put a wealth of information out there. There's no way that I'm going to remember all of the specifics of all the things that I've ever learned in my life to a systematic account. So I can always go back later in my career and watch my own videos to be like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot about that point, da da da, right? So what ends up happening is, I create work, I create these video series, these video lectures create value, hopefully, in the world. If not for you, they do create value for me. And what ends up happening is that value is cycled back to me. I can look back at, and I've done this, I've looked back at my old videos and be like, you know what? My upcoming video on representation in hip-hop, it was a consequence of me reviewing my own work. My upcoming video lecture on hip-hop and war, or sort of like, survival of the fittest mentality, was a consequence of synthetic fragments response to my response, right? So I go back and look on the work that I've produced, and that gives me sort of energy. It gives me an incentive to continue producing more work, right? So it's this sort of enclosed cyclical system that I've constructed for myself, wherein my work fuels more work, right? So it's just me thinking about my work, producing more information out there, talking to a lot of people to assess sort of the vibe and create more work for myself. And it's a never-ending process of just perpetually working, which I don't mind. This is who I am. This is sort of my lecture series on the grind. If you haven't watched it, this is sort of what I'm doing. Now, so we recognize that the immoralist gets the value through work. The question was, how does, according to Nietzsche, the Christian attain value? Well, since this is a system of free writing, which I want to write on the board, since this is a system of free writing, and you guys know what free writing means. Being a free writer is like being a loafer, right? It's the person who sleeps on his or her friend's couch for 8 months, doesn't pay any bills, doesn't wash any dishes, doesn't make any contributions to the house, but gets to live for free, gets to eat for free, sort of a freeloader, right? A free rider. That's the idea. So how is it that, according to Nietzsche, the Christian attains value? Remember, the Christian attained value through a disposition. It wasn't through work. Right? So you can see that these are polemic, right? These are not, and actually I should put poles because they're not biconditionals, right? They're polemic. They're two ends to a pole, and they couldn't be farther in disagreement on this point, and this point specifically, right? This is probably one of the stark. Sorry, my camera died, my battery died. So I usually lose a few minutes every time the battery dies. So I just want to recap what I've put up here. So I'll actually erase this because I'm not sure if this came out in the last bit that I lost. Okay, so we should be probably somewhere around here. So just to recap, because I probably lost some in the camera dying. The point is as follows, as we've seen before. We're attempting to understand within a closed system the relationship socio-culturally between an immoralist worldview and a Christian worldview. The immoralist, as we've seen before, attains value through an active attribution, right? So the immoralist attains value through active attribution. What does that mean? The immoralist works, and through the immoralist work, we arrive at value. And hopefully this was in it before. I'm not sure if this was lost. If it was, you have to forgive me for being redundant. But the process, as an example, the process of me creating these video lectures isn't wholly altruistic. I do get a ton of benefit from, it sounds egotistical, but I get a ton of benefit from watching myself, right? So I'll go back and review the points that I made in the lecture in order to make my lectures better, but I also go back to a lot of the video series that I've done, especially based on comments that I get from different users, and it gives me ideas to create new lectures. So that the process of me putting this information out into the world also fuels the very process of me putting out information. So I got ideas for a hip-hop discussion on representation because of my lecture series on Nietzsche Spivak's representation and Can the Subaltern Speak? And in the middle of me doing the lecture, all of this is almost freestyle. I mean, I use notes, but most of this is sort of a combination of notes plus the reading plus what I know. So in the process of actually putting the information out there, I was like, oh yeah, I can do a lecture series on representation in hip-hop, right, from Nietzsche Spivak, initial lecture. So what ends up happening is that the work, and I consider myself an immoralist, right, so the work of an immoralist creates value, but it's not this sort of altruistic, I'm doing for everyone else. No, to be honest with you, I'm doing a lot of this for myself. That value is cycled back into the immoralist to produce more work, right? This lecture series gives me an idea, like I just said, the word freestyling in this lecture series, and now I just thought, wow, I haven't done a philosophy of hip-hop on freestyling. Like freestyling as far as rapping, this is a perfect example. This is like a performative art example. The lecture series that you're watching currently right now, I just talked about freestyling, and now I've created more work for myself. And hopefully that will be valuable to you, it will for me, and that will create more work for myself. And create more work for myself. And I just continually create new work for myself. Right? Now, there's a ton of value that is derived, hopefully, from me putting so much information out into the cyberspace, not just for me, but also for you, the viewer. What ends up happening is that value for the Christian worldview, according to Nietzsche, is a consequence of disposition, right? Right? It's sort of like this fake it till you make it. Just look the part rather than actually work the part. Insofar as you're only looking the part, you're not actually putting forth the effort, then what ends up happening is that you, oh, of course now my red is going out. This is not good. And I don't think I have another red. No, this is my only red, and I want to use red. Bastards. Okay. So, yeah, there we go. Then what ends up happening is that value cycles through the system in one half, right? So it cycles through the system in one half, in the immoralist half, but on the, and we can divide this, right? So let's do that. But on the Christian half, according to Nietzsche, right? So we separate the system. On this half, it's not cycling. You can see it's not cycling. It cycles here, but it doesn't cycle here. It's just perpetually funneled into, right? And this is the idea of free writing. This is the idea of free writing. As I said before, I'm not sure if it got cut off or not. As I said before, the idea of free writing is a consequence of inactivity, right? This disposition isn't really work. It's grounded. The system is grounded in inactivity. It's grounded in inactivity, right? So that you can see that the system isn't fair, right? The problem of free writing, if you were to ask yourself, what is the problem? If you were to ask yourself, what's the problem of free writing? It's that only one member of society is actually contributing authentic value to the total system, and other individuals in the system are reaping benefits of value of other people's work without actually doing anything, right? It's just the mere, and I'll give you examples in a second, but it's the mere disposition of work. It's not actual work, right? So we can see that the first problem, if we were to look at sort of problems of the system, of free writing, right? If we were to look at problems, and there are many, but I'm just going to discuss a few. If we were to look at problems of the system of free writing, this particular system, the first obvious problem is that the system is inherently, the system is inherently unfair, right? The system is unfair. And the question is, to whom is the system unfair? Well, obviously, it's unfair for the immoralist, right? It's unfair for the